This is Andrew, maintaining the Mastodon and Mealy integrations. Happy birthday, Home Assistant.
Hi, I'm AppCompata, co-maintainer of HA Core Plugwise and the HACS Stromer e-bike integrations, wishing Home Assistant a very happy birthday.
Hello, this is Dick Gomes, maintaining integrations, Utility Meter, Riemann-Sum, Filter, IPMA, Rosswood, B2C, KMtronic, Push Image, and Media Room. Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
I'm Kylan and I maintain the Sense Energy and Sleep IQ integrations. Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
Hey, I'm Slack. I maintain the Spotify, Wittings and Mealy integrations, among other things. Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
Hi there, this is JP, maintaining a bunch of integrations. Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
Hey guys, this is Michael, MIG 1185, maintainer of 9 integrations and a proud member of this community for more than 4 years. Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
This is Robin, maintainer of Access Beacons and Unify integrations. Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
Happy birthday, Home Assistant! Nog vele jaren!
Hi, my name is Tzvi. I am the maintainer of the Home Assistant Jewish calendar integration. Happy birthday, Home Assistant! As they say in Hebrew, Ad 120.
Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
I'm Mikey from GitHub and I support the Electric Kiwi integration. Happy birthday, Home Assistant!
Wow, welcome everybody. Awesome, happy birthday to Home Assistant. We've had 11 years now of Home Assistant. My name's Missy. I'm the community and social media manager for Home Assistant. I have here with me hosting the other way. Sorry, Bearded Tinker.
Hi everybody, nice to see you everybody.
He's one of our content creators in the Creator Network, and he agreed to come host this with me to talk a lot about the community and how it's changed over the past, I don't know, 11-ish years. So, Andre, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about what you do.
Well, this is a tough spot. When you watch anniversary streams, and I do create content, but I also watch the creators and I also watch the developers and everything. We had a couple of years ago Ben from Bro Automation, which is one of the people that started, at least for me, he introduced home automation and Home Assistant to me. Then we had Dr. Z a couple of years ago from his Hobbit Hole, and now sitting in their shoes, it's like, oh my God, I'm so excited, really. So yeah, I do mostly content around Home Assistant, devices that connect to Home Assistant, smart home, everything around that. But I also do stuff around 3D printing because I think that smart homes, DIY things, and 3D printer together make a awesome, projects for the spare time. So yeah.
All right. People are worried that you have stolen Frank and Paulus's job, and actually those guys are here with us today. So let me first bring on Paulus, our founder and CEO for Home Assistant. Thank you, Paulus. And then we have Frank, our engineering lead. You guys know him the most from GitHub stuff and reviewing things. So, I thought about doing party poppers. I really did, but it was like too last second. I was like, I could have just popped them all.
I found a few with my daughter, and she had a few. So that's still like that. I'm gonna restore. Hi.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. Now we know that some of you are approaching actually not our birthday anymore. It's a little late for those of you in Europe and maybe Australia, New Zealand. You guys are already on tomorrow. Sorry. But today, September 17th, is the anniversary of Home Assistant. And I want to kind of talk about really quick how this is going to go. We're going to do a quick introduction, go through, talk to the guys about what community means to them, and then move into the evolution of the community and talk about what's next. So I actually want to hand it off to Andre because he's going to kick it off for us.
Yeah. So Paulus, I actually had the pleasure of meeting you in person this year, and we talked about that also on the our community monthly meetups. That's what actually does community mean to you? Because I know that you, together with other members of the team, are really trying to push the community, the local communities. I wouldn't say to take over part of the responsibility, but to try to maintain connection between users and to help each other. So, community.
Yeah, I mean, community. It's the heart of Home Assistant, right? I would say that like, without community, there would be no Home Assistant. Then there's nothing. The people that make Home Assistant, the people that use Home Assistant, the people that help others use Home Assistant, the people that promote Home Assistant, that fix the documentation, write examples, help test new devices, report bugs. It's everywhere. It's like ingrained in every process. Everything we do is community, community, community. From making sure that there's amazing release notes that everybody can read, from like the YouTubers that write about all the releases, and then the people in the comments talking about it. Like it's everywhere. And this summer, I mean, I went to Zagreb. We had a great meetup. I actually had another few meetups in Switzerland and Denmark, and really I've been like everywhere, just talking to contributors, talking to users, because they are the beating heart, right? Without them, we would just be like Google Home or something, but then less funded. So no, it's community is everything for us, and it's also why we are so strong, right? Why is Home Assistant better than all the other platforms? Is because we have people from all over the world thinking about things, pushing their own projects. Home Assistant is extensible in that way also, right? So a community maybe in France can build like a French forum, but also have specific integrations for like the French weather or the French railroad system. And that really allows us to be everywhere and be everything for everyone inside the home.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is also somebody else here who is a community member, streamer, developer, add-on developer, maintainer, and then also part of the Nabucasa team. Frank, you actually had your own community around your channel, because you started. You were actually one of the first guys that I was watching streaming while coding. You were streaming what you were doing with add-ons.
And you still remember this one, right?
Yeah, true. But how does it feel now to be on the other side of the community? I don't mean
it's not the other side.
I don't mean the other side, but
no. But as for me, it actually nothing changed, right? Like I did streams back in the day. For people that didn't know, I was actually bored to death. When I started Home Assistant, I wasn't a home automation user at all. I don't have the regular story. I just looked for something to code and contribute to, and that's how I went into Home Assistant somehow. And I found what I found after fixing a bug that I thought I could pick up. I found an amazing community that was just open, welcoming, happy something got fixed, right? And happy to contribute to, and it felt good. It felt good to be part of that. So I started doing more and more, and now I'm here. And that's actually the root of my story. The live streams at the time, that was a fun thing to do. It was a way to show and interact with the community for a system that I didn't use at the time, right? For me, it was a way to connect and learn from people what they do with it, how they would use it, and what they would like. And in the end, right, it became worse and worse. And it became a similar story for many of us, where we started doing a lot of late hours, long days, and that became harder and harder. Home Assistant grew really, really, really fast. And that today actually is about 7 years for me now. Like it's my 7 years birthday almost, and it's almost the same as the Home Assistant birthday. It's just kind of like weird. It's time flies, and it's amazing.
When you have fun.
Yeah, no, but that's it, right? It's the community that made this, and it's the reason I'm here.
Yeah, there was this one time Frank was streaming, and he didn't know, but like I had acquired the phone number of his fiance, and so I had and I was visiting the Netherlands. Like I live in America, but I'm originally from the Netherlands, so I had, texted with her, and that during the live stream she would open the door, and so I crashed the stream.
I was on that stream. I was watching it live.
Everybody knew except me, which was weird. But yeah, that was fantastic. It was one of the most viewed snippets actually on Twitch. Actually, somehow I never knew how that ended up, but yeah, that was amazing.
It's very funny. Jeez, I love it. Actually, Andre, Bearded Tinker, you have an anniversary that just happened as well, right?
Yeah. So I've been using Home Assistant around 6 years now, a bit more than that. But actually, my channel and my first video for Home Assistant went live on 13th of September, 5 years ago. So
congratulations!
Also 5 years. Yeah, I'm less successful in terms of commits and things like that than you are, but I do try.
Listen, in the end, it's not about the commits, right? It's not about developers at all. Of course, you need them, but you need people like you making the YouTube videos, right? And bringing out our message as well. It's not just development. If anything at all, it's maybe not even half part of it.
Yeah, and we do our live streams. We get our information out there across the blog, our forums, stuff like that. But without our content creators, there just wouldn't be the video content that helps walk people through a lot of this stuff, because we just do not have the time to do it all.
But we can't keep up with you, because when we release a video, with the next release, you change it completely. So we have to do that again.
But I cannot even keep up with all the contributors. Like if I'm looking from a developer perspective, if I'm working on the releases every month, it's like more than half of it is a complete surprise to me, because it's like you cannot, even if you're on top of this all day like we are, it's impossible to even follow. It's that quick. Everybody's working on the same goals.
One of the things I always really like is that we develop in the open, right? As in, we've been working for a while now on voice. We've been working for a while now on dashboards. And, we put out a little bit. People can play with it. We put out a little bit more. People can play with it. Now, of course, Andre, as you're saying, yes, that means your videos will be out of date because we are iterating. But it's much better to do it this way, where everybody can jump in, give their opinions, which is not always the easiest part, to be honest. But it helps us really refine the things we're building versus in 3 years, let's do a big dump of here's our new dashboards. And everybody's like, whoa, where does that come from? That doesn't work for me, right? And so it's cool we work in the open, but yeah, that does mean a little bit more videos. But hey, that's also fun.
One question, if I may. Sorry, Missy, for jumping in. Do you think that you have now enough people contributing, but in terms of beta testing? Because I still see a lot of comments that people are either not knowing that they can do beta testing, and not knowing that there are actually release notes before the release notes on the rc.home assistant website. And should more people be involved in the beta testing, in your opinion?
Yeah. So I think so. Frank and I have actually had conversations about this back when I actually started. But there are ways I think we can improve our communication about how to get involved with the beta stuff, in my opinion. And I know others will disagree. I think a 2-week beta would make more sense overall. But the excitement that happens within that 1 week of beta week is just, it's so fun. It's energetic. It absolutely gets everybody involved and wired. And it is so fun seeing the beta channel, honestly, just light up and do all of that. So I think the biggest problem we actually have is just that beta testing happens more in Discord than it does anywhere else. And we should try to celebrate that out a little bit more and communicate how people can get involved more. I think a lot of people are also worried that if they're doing beta on their primary instance, they're just going to mess everything up for people. And that's understandable. Totally understandable.
Shit can happen, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for a reason, right? But we do have very good backups nowadays. And I think that's also part of the story, right? Like you said, there are many people around for a long time and maybe scared of how it went back in the day. I remember back in the day that even Paulus was here one time and he cut a beta or a release even, and it was just on my kitchen here, and he did 5 minutes before we went out the door, because it was just basically shipping our development. That was literally shipping a release at that time, and it was scary as well, but it was normal. We weren't at large. But nowadays, we do beta testing, right? We do a lot of automated testing compared to where we were like 5 years ago, where we could run our test suite in like 5 minutes. We now spin 10 instances at the same time that can together complete testing in 45 minutes or 25 minutes or something. But the amount of tests and automations that are going on there to keep quality high is insanely improved over time. And from my perspective, I actually, and this is not an advertisement at all, I wouldn't recommend it, but I run the nightly builds, right? I run dev in my home. And the reason why I do that is because it's just, it is that stable nowadays. It's not that scary. So betas are more focused on new features nowadays, and actually not that scary to involved. It's actually fun. You can give early feedback and help like form the final release even. So if you're interested even mildly in trying, I would definitely say try it once. It's fun. It truly is fun.
And actually, to join the beta channel, you go to settings, go to system updates, and then in the top right in the overflow should be the place to opt into the beta channel, or leave it if you don't like it, of course.
Yeah, and it's just as easy as installing an update.
Yeah.
Nice.
I currently have a couple of test systems, I think like 11 or something like that. Because of that, I decided to finally pull out my main system after beta testing, just to be sure, because I still have to sleep somewhere at night, and you know how it goes.
That is very much how it goes. And a lot of people, I see some comments like they don't run .zeros ever. When I was hired on, that was actually a big thing that people were telling me. They're like, we don't run .zeros. Tell me when .1 comes out. Like they were adamant that .0 was not a safe thing to run. But as I've been working here since February, like the stabilization of updates has significantly improved. We've made things faster, like Draco has just absolutely made things way easier to update. You don't have to wait forever for things to boot up anymore. So like we have done a lot of work with the contributors overall to stabilize .zeros. And now, Frank, my understanding is we do regular updates every Friday now, right?
Right, and everybody says you have to wait to .1 because they get out the kinks, right? No, you get the .1 because it's Friday. It's just a timing thing and not necessarily anything else. So join the beta, help out, use a backup to roll back. Don't be scared of 0.0. Sure, everybody will make mistakes, but that can be in 0.01 as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be .0.
Nice.
But we do a lot nowadays compared to back in the days.
Yeah, so we have our beta channel in Discord, and we'll actually talk a little bit more about that later, because the Discord implementation did make it a lot easier for communication overall. So we'll talk about that later in the evolution of things. Frank, I actually want to talk quickly about, because you and I have talked about how sometimes it's hard to push the community in the right direction for what we want to do or what we're trying to do. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. To be clear on this, by the way, Paulus and I haven't been informed of anything we're talking today.
Everything is
so we are just going with the flow here. The gyroscope. Yes. The flywheel. That's what
yes. In which I thought you meant a flywheel of a transmission and not a flywheel of a gyroscope. So
a gyroscope is basically used in space, right, for navigation and keeping position and track of where you are. But the interesting thing about a flywheel is that is how I see Home Assistant as a project, but also mostly the community that is, right? So if you have the flywheel in the middle, once that starts spinning, it will keep spinning in that direction. If you have ever seen the YouTube video of the professor having a bicycle wheel, spinning it hard and will not change, it will stay afloat. That's basically how I see this, right? The community started to drive and the wheels start spinning faster and faster over these years. And everybody is helping making that thing spin faster and have the ideas and give their swing to it. We do, the community does, everybody does. But it also means that we're going forward in that direction and it's hard to slow down, which is kind of great in a way that we're not slowing down, right? That's amazing. We keep spinning up. But the price we pay for this is that changing direction is hard. Changing direction for us is hard, but for the community as well. At the same time, it helps us keeping us doing the thing we were set to do. So the community keeps us in check because of this flywheel, basically, right? We are moving towards the right direction. We keep towards more open source, more user friendliness, but also adding more features, keeping things extensible, privacy choice, sustainability, all the things that we're standing for. But if we do want to make change, then a flywheel needs a little push in a different direction. And that push can either be like a large push, for example, from the community, but it could also be like a long time gentle push to easily ease out the direction of it. So I think this is a great way to look at it. But with any analogy, you can probably bust it. But nevertheless, I do like this analogy.
Yeah, and I actually, we don't always the community is not a monolith, right? It's like all these different groups of people that care about different things. And for example, like last year we had Year of the Voice, and we had people interested in voice around Home Assistant, but they weren't really organized. And we hired Mike Hansen, and he became the voice lead, and he created this community for Home Assistant. We have now over 60 language leaders that are working out all the sentences, translations for different languages. And even though our voice last year wasn't there yet, I mean, we were building up slowly, of course, in the open. It's like now we have a lot of momentum. There's a lot of people from all different languages working on making it better. And then, later this year, we're actually going to release some official hardware to that everyone can access this voice. And this flywheel is really taking off. And it will be, I think, once the hardware is out and anyone can actually easily access it without having to program anymore, it's going to the moon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where we needed a gyroscope, right? So it fits again. That's good.
We can roll it into whatever we need to. It's totally fine. We'll fit in your analogy there. Don't worry. All right. So now that we actually have an idea of what Paulus and Frank see community as, I want to go into the evolution of community. Excellent. Okay, that was smooth. I actually want to cater my conversation first to Bearded Tinker. Andre, 5 years now creating content for Home Assistant, a user for about a year before that. So from my understanding is a lot of content in the early days went from how to not break this, how to update without breaking Home Assistant or your automations, to here's how you actually use these new features. So I kind of want to know, from your experience, how that transition ended up happening, because I know it's different for the content creators than it is for the viewers and stuff like that.
I think that I always try to look things with two perspectives. One is a content creator, because what is good as a content sometimes may not be good for the end user, or vice versa. I'm hating the changes as content creator. Not actually, but I like to use strong words. This is something that I think we will also touch that up a little bit later in today's stream. When we started creating content, a lot of people didn't know how to create automations. There were no automations editors. There were no script editors. There were no any input, any type of anything that was created automatically from within Home Assistant. There were integrations, of course. You could integrate. I think one of the integrations I did video was the integration for content creator that is actually not available anymore because it's deprecated. But you had to follow some steps. You had to follow some rules. Everything was done by hand. You had to restart a lot of Home Assistants. So it was try, restart, fix, restarts. Nowadays, most of that has been gone. And as content creator, I watch videos also from the others. There are actually people that create now videos. I cannot. I'm sorry. I talk too much. I do. I like to talk too much. And my videos are never less than 10, 12, 15, 20 minutes if I'm lucky. But you can actually now create content that is 3, 4, 5 minutes long that will show integration and everything get covered for something that was impossible just a couple of years ago. So from the perspective of users, it's actually awesome. The other problem I have is I'm too involved emotionally, because this is something that I do as my hobby. For me, I don't see any barriers now that were maybe before for starting with Home Assistant. Installations are a breeze. We now have operating system. Docker installation also is very easy. When I started with the Zigbee, it was like, you have to sacrifice a chicken or do something to get started that working. Most of that is actually out of the box, and a lot of things except Z-Wave. This is something that I'm still having issues, but that's not. I don't know. I will not be talking about Z-Wave.
We'll follow up after the stream.
I wanted to say how a pain in the ass it was back in the days to restart your Home Assistant after you fixed your YAML for upgrading, and then I had to wait 20 minutes before Z-Wave was up.
And Bidraco has also helped everybody, and because I think that if you look at how the things components were loaded, the loading times, a load up of Home Assistant, even on fast systems, it was actually slow for the systems that you were using. Today, things are flying. Databases are more stable. I haven't seen any database incident on my setup like in years.
We should actually, we mentioned Bidraco a couple of times. I just want to just quick step back. So Bidraco is a community member. He is like an amazing developer. He has one of the things that he loves to do is to just run Home Assistant through like a profiler, and he's like, okay, this piece of code is taking up too much of the time. Like, that doesn't make sense, or why is this code being called so often? And then he just starts optimizing it, and he is just, over the past 2 years, he's been chopping off like more and more and more. And of course, every time you take away the most expensive operation in Home Assistant, you will find the next one and the next one and the next one. And we're now at a point that Home Assistant is just so optimized. Like, the loading is fast. We're doing staged loading where like everything is loaded as soon as possible. So the front end is up, so you can actually start looking at Home Assistant and see everything pop in, and the database migration. Everything is so fast. So back to you, Andre. But Bidraco, he's awesome.
But we talked, Missy, when we were talking last week. We were talking about when the change started, and I was really having a hard time to figure out, because this is a really gradual process. There were a lot of people at some point or the other point when they were not happy with the changes, because changes can sometimes be scary. I know myself, for us in Eastern Europe, for example, changing a job can be a problem because people get used to work 35 years in the same company and then go to retirement. So lucky for me, I've changed for at least 5-7 jobs so far. So, but any change can really be troublesome. And I remember we were having chats, and this was at the time when the final release of Home Assistant was about to happen. It was around, do you remember that time? It was around
the 1.0?
Yeah, 1.0. This was the funniest period of all. But actually, a lot of things have. I think that Home Assistant has become, I wouldn't say company at that point, but it became, it grew from the basement project to a serious project, just with that one small shift, because it actually brought a lot of changes in after that. From beta testing, from how releases are managed, life cycle of the product, and things like that. So, but it was really fun process to go through everything.
For me, that moment in time is more of the around the Home Assistant Blue, actually. I think that when we started working on the Home Assistant Blue as one of the first hardware experiments and products we did, we actually realized that we're going to ship a product that should never fail to start up. And for me, that is the time where we started to actually make sure Home Assistant would always start, and the UI would always come up really quick, and make sure it always runs. That one, exactly, there it is. It's beautiful, by the way. It's still a lot.
That is beautiful.
Casing. The metal casing is like not the most like super thing if you want to get radio signals out. but it's shiny and nice. But the thing is, like, that's the first time we started thinking about, like, hey, this system should always start up no matter what. And that's actually where we start building recovery modes and things like that. It's all driven at that time. So while this was a first hardware experiment, it also changed and shifted the focus in stability a lot.
I know that I have some community members that are still running Home Assistant, among others, on the Blue, but every time, no, I wouldn't say every year because you don't do release of the products every year, but nevertheless, they bought greens and yellows because a lot of people actually buy them as a memento or thinking of it as a contribution to you guys for developing something, and they already have Proxmox machines, servers, and things like that. It's like, memorabilia of how things went from blue to green.
Yeah.
I personally still run on the Blue as well.
Oh, nice.
So my home setup.
I use one for testing for the community add-ons still every day.
That's awesome.
I have one at my parents'.
I'm sad that was before my time because that piece of hardware is beautiful and I wish I had that now.
It's gone. We might not ever make something like this again because it was a really pain to get no bubbles in the anodized aluminium. So
putting a Zigbee radio inside a metal casing wasn't a success.
Yeah,
and, that doesn't work.
Yeah,
and then things like the Blue was an awesome first time. It was actually inspired by a 70s or 60s toaster.
Yeah,
I wondered that's where the inspiration came from for the case.
Oh my goodness, a toaster. I love that. I didn't know that. That is great. Oh man. So basically, one of the things Andre had told me was that when you guys went to 1.0, or at least that's what people expected to happen. What really happened is you guys went year.month instead, right? And so that threw the whole community off overall. So I'm actually going to put this to Paulus. Like, how did you view the community when they took that? What was your actual thought process behind making that decision overall? Because a lot of people expect that 1.0 versus the year-month kind of dots.
Yeah, so this started way back in, like, there used to be just dumps whenever, like, in the very early days of Home Assistant, I would be like, okay, I think this is a nice moment to do a release. I would just add, like, hey, this is the release of, like, whatever, November 12th, and then 2015, and let's go. But then at some point we're like, we need a versioning number. And so I felt at that point we're already pretty mature. We were absolutely not. But I put out 0.7. That was the first version of Home Assistant that has a version number of 0.7. And then, of course, 0.8 came, 0.9. Everybody's like, oh, now it's going to be 1.0. And then we shipped 0.10. And, of course, this messed up a lot of versioning numbers because if you know floating numbers, 0.10, of course, is lower than 0.9. But yeah, so anyway, we went there and this 1.0 became this kind of epic. This like, what would a 1.0 version of Home Assistant have? Well, it should have authentication. So we're working on authentication. It should have like backups, discoverability, but the goalpost kept moving and they kept moving and moving. And we were like, okay, people have such high expectations and people also expect that if we are going to launch a 1.0 that nothing is ever going to break again. Like this is just, hey, your house is like rock solid. But we integrate with so many things that have APIs that change, that Home Assistant will need updating to those changes. And those external factors will break your Home Assistant installation. Like, oh, now your speakers don't work as expected anymore, or your lights drop off or whatever. And so, yeah, we were just talking and we were like, we can never make this. We should basically set the community free from these expectations. And so that was, okay, we'll just do date versioning. And in a way, date versioning for us is semantic versioning because you cannot expect something to work that is from a newer version in an older version because we have all the integrations built into Home Assistant, right? Like there's like 2,000 or something integrations. And we make sure they are all upgraded to new APIs if we add them. And then we add deprecation periods for like the community integrations and these kind of things. But yeah, we really by dropping 1.0, a lot of stress was actually removed. And we started to be able to think and develop more freely. And we could also, some people could focus on other things that were not per se 1.0 worthy, but where their desire was there. So yeah, it was a huge relief, I would say, to get to date versioning.
The nice thing about date versioning is that if you know the version of Home Assistant, you instantly know how outdated your install is or how updated it is. Right? Yeah, that's interesting. We had a 1.006. Nobody knows which year or date it was, but if you currently see your version of Home Assistant, you instantly know where you're at. So that's kind of nice, and it communicates easily. Everybody has a better sense of time and how old stuff is at that point. So that's kind of nice. But still, to celebrate the 1.0 we wanted to make, right? We made the beta tag 1.0, and that threw off the community at that point, which was not meant to be mean. It was meant as a celebration. Some people found it mean because we never made 1.0, but for me, we did 1.0, right? It existed, and we are mature enough at this point as a project, and we definitely can say that we're on 1.0, in my opinion. But we switched to date as a more, for us, interesting version and better fitting.
Yeah. As a software thing, I actually prefer it too, for the exact point you called out. Like when something breaks, it's, you know exactly what version you're on. You know when it was released. You know how far back you are. Like if you see someone with 2023.8, you're going to be like, there's your problem, right? So it's just a lot of things that can go into it that make it a lot easier to understand than the versionings, is, I would say, it's actually called overall. So yeah, I had no idea about that, actually. When I was doing all of my digging stuff, I saw that it was like .7s and stuff like that. And then I had no clue about the transition over it until I talked with Andre last week.
Oh, the community. We had Reddit topics like 1.0 is coming. Like nobody knew, only a beta.
It was New Year. It was actually around New Year. Everybody was expecting that on the 1st of January.
We went straight into .12 after that. So
Oh no. Oh, that's great. Oh my goodness. All right. So, Paulus, you kind of touched a little bit on people contributing their own stuff. So when we talk about that, we're talking about Home Assistant Community Store, HACS, as everybody really knows it as. And that's where a lot of the custom components and integrations go into that don't make it into core overall and actually built into it. Paulus, how do you feel that enabled the devs and contributors to be more active with what they were doing rather than focusing so hard on trying to get something into Home Assistant?
Well, I want to sidestep that question a little bit and say that, with Home Assistant, we've always, we value the community, right? Like I said, it's the beating heart. And so we made sure that when Home Assistant was created, every layer of Home Assistant is customizable. You don't like an integration, you can override that integration. Usually blows back in a couple of months, but you can do that. You can create your own custom integrations that, are a copy, but just a few things different. It also, in the front end, you can create your own cards, you can create your own entity rows, you can create your own whole panels, strategies. And by allowing every layer to be customizable, it really allows Home Assistant to be a community instead of a project. And what I mean with that is that in Home Assistant, we have a certain direction we want to go and a certain complexity we're willing to accept as maintainers and a certain platforms we want to support. And it means that sometimes we will say no. Like a good example here is web scraping. We do not allow web scraping to be done by integrations because it's very fragile. Like web scraping is where you browse to a website and you know where the information is, and that's how you take it out of the website. Now, if the website changes the way it's built, it breaks the integration. And, people always complain everything breaks in Home Assistant. Like, this is not something we want to do. Because then we're like shipping a patch release because somebody updated the website. And they update the website again, another patch release. And not just one, but like 100 integrations. But these things can totally live as custom components. People can build them, distribute them, share them. And actually, Joachim, he made that amazing with the Home Assistant Community Store, which allows anyone to just list their custom contributions, give it back to the community in an easy way. Because, of course, everything that's inside Home Assistant is the absolute easiest way, because that's what people already have before they get to the community store. But nowadays, with the recent HACS 2.0 release of last month, it's super easy also to install the community store and to actually see the amount of stuff that's out there. And, we, of course, it's not just web scraping. There's other reasons why people don't bring it to core. Sometimes it's really just very complicated. There's these graph cards that are super amazing, but they have 1,000 options, and that would just not work, right, for the interface we want to offer, the audience we want to reach with Home Assistant. But get it from HACS, and you can have your energy with a Sankey chart with like 5 lanes going to 2 lanes and know exactly how much energy each area is using. And that's awesome. It's there. It's available.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually didn't even touch HACS until after we launched 2.0, and it really did make it a lot easier to kind of mess around with and toy with things overall, and mostly because I'm just messing with weather stuff, right? So there's a lot of great weather integrations that are in HACS and highly usable, and a lot of great data you can actually pull in that you don't get in with the weather integration we have built in. So I had only touched HACS for the first time a couple weeks ago, just to chase down something for the community. It was lovely, actually. So yeah, I love that HACS lets people contribute still to Home Assistant in a way that's not only for them, but other people can find it, right? Anybody can install what you actually created if you load it up to the community store, and it makes it so you can share out those projects. It's lovely.
Yeah.
And do you
sorry, go for it.
No, go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we were talking with GitHub the other day, and I explained it to them where I see GitHub is like the place where we build Home Assistant. Around that, we have Home Assistant, the project itself, which people use directly. But then on top of that, you have HACS, which are like the skyscrapers or the villages around of like mini communities that are also rallying around their own things and building. And because the core is on GitHub and it's all open source and it's open from the start, everybody else is sharing their solutions, right? Everybody else is sharing their work because they feel they want to contribute back. And once you get that kick of sharing something and somebody has feedback that makes it better, just not only for them, but also for yourself, and you see the power of community, it can get very addictive, right? And I feel like this is what you're seeing.
Yeah. That's how I ended up here. Yeah. Right? So that it definitely is. At least for me, it was.
Yeah.
And this is also one of the reasons why there is a HACS 2.0. Negative aspects of HACS upgrade, I would say it like that, because of too many integrations, too many requests, too many people using it. So
that's the backstory of HACS 2.0, which again it's a fun one to tell. HACS 1.0 would, every time somebody would add their custom contribution to HACS, it would mean that every user of HACS would now go to GitHub and check if there's updates for this one repository. But of course, there's not one repository in HACS. There's like 1,000 or something, or 2,000. And so what started happening as Home Assistant grew, the HACS user base grew, we were basically DDoSing GitHub, because worldwide we would add an extra integration and another 200,000 requests would be made every 6 hours to GitHub. And so GitHub was like, oh, okay, can we talk about this? And so we made, or Joachim made like a centralized API where basically we check all of GitHub, we store it in a single JSON file, and now HACS can just download this file and we don't have to hit GitHub anymore. So that is actually what brought us to HACS 2.0. And this is also why HACS is faster, more advanced now, and it can do more cool stuff.
And why new integrations show up again, which is also the best thing, right? So HACS has been a little bit slow the last year-ish, and now it starts to expand again, right? And new integrations show up. So there's more to share. And it's good to see the new stuff popping up there as well. It is definitely great. And if something is really, really great, like it might end up becoming Home Assistant standard, right? Eventually.
Yeah. But there are some things that moved from Home Assistant to HACS. For example, let's remember the Raspberry Pi.
Yep. That had a similar change as all the web scraping, right? They used to be in Home Assistant, the famous ADR 0004 for people that know and have ever seen it. But that's the architecture decision record, as we call it. That's where we make decisions and make a record of them and make the rules for that stuff. But yeah, web scraping was at one time just allowed, just like Paul said. Nowadays we don't. That means at some point we had to make a call to move them out of Home Assistant, and many of them ended up to be a custom integration and thus show up in HACS nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone commented like the Tesla integration moved to HACS, so that ended up getting shifted from core to HACS as well. So
that was also an interesting story. Most often there's an interesting story behind these things. For Tesla, so Tesla didn't want us to integrate with them, so they kept fighting us. So they kept making their authentication harder to log into. Then it was almost scraping, but we were still logging in. But like they kept changing it all the time. They were actively looking what we were doing and then shipping a fix to prevent us from doing it. And we would ship another fix, and we got pretty tired of this. And we're like, okay, it's clear Tesla does not want an official Home Assistant integration. And at some point, actually, the cat and mouse game got so bad that the community created an application on iOS and Android that would be faster to iterate with getting the tokens that you needed for the Home Assistant integration. And at that point, we were like, okay, this is out of control. We can't ask people to install third-party applications, put in their Tesla credentials, which, can unlock your car, start your car, these kind of stuff. We can't guarantee that, right? So we kicked Tesla out, and now it became a HACS integration. But actually, to Tesla's credit, nowadays they do offer an API to their car. You just need to they sell access to API to, like, you have to become like a vendor. There's a couple of vendors like Tessie, for example. You pay them and they have access to the Tesla API, and it's like $3 a month or something. And you can actually get so much information about your car. It's kind of wild. Like there's so many sensors on this car, and so being able to fully integrate into Home Assistant, preheat it when you have to drive in the morning, that kind of stuff. It's all possible. But yeah, it started first.
We got Madalena and JLo fighting in the comments about whether Tesla is great or awful. So just
that's a good one, because JLo has a Tesla, right? So that's a hard one to win.
No, JLo is our resident Tesla owner, and he very much talks a lot about the integration and all the cool stuff that you can see with it overall. So yeah, Tesla's an interesting example, I would actually say. Andre, on to you.
Yeah, question for you, Frank, if I may.
Sure.
I want to talk about my trauma. I was asked by all the content creators, what will change name next? So we have supervisor, Home Assistant OS has.
You make it sound like it's my fault.
I'm just talking actions. So there are a lot of naming changes in all the categories, from OS, from HAS to HAOS. Okay, supervised, I think, remained the same, although it's not used anymore.
It is still, but I would not recommend it for normal users.
Yeah. So, how do you fight it? Because changes are sometimes needed, but
we're talking about the flywheel again, right? Basically, we can't go back to that one. No, but in the end, like, changing names is not always. We haven't been the best in naming things historically. Like, let's kick off with that. yeah. The name, it's like, I don't know, it's whatever. But it's not what the name is now there, right? And it has a point, and it has settled. So I guess the name nowadays would be acceptable and good. I'm still happy with that, but in the end, there are many things that Home Assistant was built from a developer perspective, right? Paul started this as a project to control his Philips Hue, basically, and that's where it started. It was a completely, I love me, sorry. Yeah. He started doing that, and it became a developer community. That's how Home Assistant made its initial growth. It was purely developers coming together, making a technical product. With that comes a lot of technical terms. And over all these years, some of them kept in. But at the same time, we're trying to make it easier, right? Like you said, Home Assistant operating system, for example, that you mentioned just now, changed the game of Home Assistant a lot. Everybody was able to quickly install and run it now, instead of bringing their own operating system and Linux and Debian and doing commands and whatnot. You can now just flash it and run it. But a lot of these terms from history are still around. And one of the bigger examples in recent history is the term services and service calls. And it has always been a struggle on how to explain what it is. And if you're a long-time user of Home Assistant, I can definitely understand. For me, it's still hard to, I will say services 10 times a day still. But we've renamed it to actions, because if you're coming to Home Assistant, you would understand what an action is, that something is changing and happening in your home, taking the action to turn on your lights. While services is a weird concept, especially if you talk about devices and services, which we had around for many years as well. Paulus and I have been debating the term devices and services for years. And at some point, I was so tired of it that I called it things. And there was a large part of the community saying, yeah, let's do things. Like, no, let's not. Like, things is also everything, right? But to go back, naming is hard. And we're in a phase where Home Assistant we have been working towards a phase and changing direction of Home Assistant slowly over the past about 6 years now, I would say, to more UI-driven and more accessible, but also keeping it powerful, extensible, and get that balance different. And part of that change is making those naming changes and making more logical things, because sometimes it's just not needed to call things differently. Just make it understandable from the get-go. And that's basically for
Do you think that people will like change now from dashboard to visuals?
No,
I'm just kidding.
In the end, nobody likes changes. I don't like them either, right? Making them is hard. And honestly, if we make a name change like service to action, we know upfront this will be people that don't like this, and should we do this? These are long discussions, happy discussions, deciding on the impact. This is not taken lightly at all. It's not like, sometimes I can definitely understand people feel like we're just smashing around names, but that's not true.
And we're actually fixing a couple of those, right? Like, we're about to do a couple more changes here for that kind of stuff, right?
Are we?
We talked about it previously when we made the services change. We talked about this, making actions, conditions, actually.
Oh, right, but that's a YAML thing. People will not notice that, but that's already in the UI. No, but things like we had a state page, right? We had our dashboard. It wasn't even called a dashboard at the time. Actually, it was the stage page. Right? The stage dashboard, and it wasn't called dashboard at the time. I forgot, but it was just states. That's what you looked at back in the day. Then we introduced Lovelace, right? It was a cool code name, but it stayed around forever. It was a code name for development, but everybody started to know what Lovelace was. So if I ask somebody, did you try Lovelace, and you're new to Home Assistant, you had no clue what you're talking about, you had to explain what it was. The rename to dashboards might be confusing for a lot of people, but at the same time, it's really helpful from now forward. We are now talking about dashboards all the time, and it's actually pretty normal. And I think these kind of changes are really good.
Yeah. And I think, the most impactful change I think we made was Home Assistant was actually a Python application. Right. And then, of course, the operating system HACS came, and we realized that the future of Home Assistant is the Home Assistant tied to the operating system, because that allows a one bit of installation where a user it becomes an appliance, right? Like your Raspberry Pi gets a user interface where it can install updates. You never, ever have to touch a terminal. And we made that decision, which was very invasive. And I know Frank initially was like, that's too much, and we had to it had to settle a little bit the dust, because it meant that Home Assistant was going to be called Home Assistant Core, and then Home Assistant OS was going to be called, HACS becomes Home Assistant. That was just if you didn't install with the operating system, then it became something special, but the default was going to be the operating system. And once we did that, it actually simplified. All our repository names became Core, Supervisor. It became super straightforward, and I think really that has benefited us a lot, just to get the focus from the whole community toward this is the future, this is how we want to run Home Assistant, and no way else. And then, by the way, when I say no way else, we do have the other ones. They're not going to go away.
But one question, you mentioned supervisor. Is it actually supervisor something that end users should see, or should it actually be somewhere under the hood? Do we need to know when there is a supervisor update? Because actually you cannot opt out of the update. You have to do it. shouldn't maybe it be somewhere tucked in nicely that nobody knows about it?
Yes, we should probably hide. I mean, for me, I would love to consolidate all update entities for Home Assistant, Supervisor, and OS into a single update entity, which is just update. But yeah, no, the user, we have, if you go into your settings screen, some of these pages will talk to a supervisor you don't even know. Like it's just doing the things, like the updates, for example. But like
I want to say that we actually started doing that size thing you're saying right now, right? Like back in the day, we had a supervisor panel besides the settings panel.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That one is gone. Like we now have the settings menu. Talking about the big change of the menu, like and people not liking changes, that one was a big thing in our history and a big dent that people have a lot of resistance against. But at the same time, we're now like highlighting a part of it, right? And it became normal. And that's a lot of help we got from many people in the teams, right? Like the UX designers and people that are thinking about the product in general more than a developer, right?
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, and we're actually kind of moving like heavily that way too. So kind of on that point, we have focused heavily on UI and UX. We've been kind of moving towards making things a lot easier in the GUI for everybody, and just making onboarding these kind of things and building stuff a lot easier. And in general, the community is favorable, but we always have someone who is upset with something we make.
Oh, well, we do make mistakes, right?
And we do make mistakes too. Absolutely. We absolutely
We're human.
But we're making a pizza for 1 million people. So we can't make everybody happy overall. So I want to lead that into Paulus. At what point made you realize you needed a design lead to help you with these UI changes to actually push forward them?
Ooh, that's a good one. The exact point, I don't know, but I think also we got UX and design involved. Probably we should have done it earlier. I think it's really beneficial. No, I think, in the beginning, as every programmer will tell you, you don't need design. You can just, we have text files. What do you need? You need you just put something together. And at some point, we adopted material design from Google, like the moment it came out, actually. And that was the first app-looking user interface for Home Assistant. And we were always like, but we don't really need design because we use the components of Google. And so we just put that on a page, and that's fine. And of course, what started to happen is that every feature that even maybe it looked okay when it was like 1 or 2 devices, by the time you had like 10 or 20 devices, your default dashboard, for example, was absolute, like it was a mess. There were like 200 badges because you added a couple of mobile phone apps. Whatever. It was messy. So we hired the first UX, not because we were looking for UX at that point, although we kind of knew, like, okay, now, Bram and I were making we were doing the front end together, we're making a lot of decisions. But then actually, like Matthias came around. He's a UX designer. He works at Nabucasa today. He works still at Nabucasa, but back then he didn't. But he came and said, look, I rebuilt the whole Home Assistant UI in Figma such that now UX designers can start helping the community easier create mockups to start iterating on Home Assistant. And Bram and I looked at each other, we're like, yeah, we want that. So we asked him, like, okay, do you just not want to join us and do this, right? Because like we don't have time for that, or the knowledge. And Matthias joined. There was already a huge change in how we operated because, we're thinking of design before we're building and writing the first line of code now. Now, I think, is it last year Marlena joined?
Yeah, I believe it was last year.
Yeah, so last year we actually, we had only Matthias, and last year we had both Marlena join us and we have JLO join us. And now we actually have a product and design department, right? So we have, and the department now actually has grown. So there's Annika just joined as a user experience researcher. We're going to have another UX designer join us soon. So we're really pumping up this department because it really helps us get ahead of like, hey, we want to build the stuff that the community needs, to build the stuff the community actually wants, right? So like with dashboards, we didn't start writing code. It's like, no, Matthias and Madalena, they just started interviewing people. They looked at every Reddit post. They were like, I think Lewis from Everything Smart Home had like been reviewing dashboards. We got all those screenshots, and they were just tracking like, okay, do they have the weather on their dashboard? Do they group by areas, or do they group by this, or is it a functional grouping? And they just started categorizing all this knowledge, and that became the input to now build, for example, what we're doing. So just to reiterate all the way back to your question, I'm not 100% sure exactly which year Matthias joined. I think it's been 3 years, maybe 4 years
Something
ago.
like that, yes.
But we probably should have done it earlier.
Well, and the great thing is now is that we are on the right track. Not only are we like making these decisions ourselves, we started folding in the community. We don't have a community group of developers contributing right now. We have a group of UX and UI designers helping Madalena and Matthias go through and get the ideas, build the designing. So we're not only building for our community is building with us now for these dashboards. And that's big, right? Not a lot of open source projects actually have non-developer community members contributing to the project this way. So I think this transition overall has been great for us, and I love to see it. I think we're going to do way more with these working groups than in the future. So it's been great.
No, I think there it's interesting because, Home Assistant was born on GitHub, and GitHub is great for sharing code, sharing bug reports. I mean, nowadays there's some discussions, but it that kind of functions, but we prefer Discord and Discourse, right? Our chat and forum. But to do collaboration with an open group of UX designers or product managers and finding these kind of like, what are the issues that are playing? How can we improve this? It's a lot harder because a lot of around open source is an individual doing something. But a UX designer or a product manager that wants to get their changes into Home Assistant, they need a team. They need someone else to actually take those changes, right? And so being able to create these processes now, and hopefully it all works out and we can expand and scale it up, and we can actually involve a lot more of open source product management, open source user experience design. That will be really cool.
As developers, we're so happy with platforms like GitHub, right? Every single tool you can think of is at our disposal to collaborate in development and reviewing and whatnot, and share ideas and iterate on that. And it's basically not an existing thing for all the other things we just discussed, right? And we're basically inventing the wheel here. Madalena is working hard on that, actually. And that is really great, right? And we're trying something.
Remember, they're run by Pineapple Pizza, guys. Madalena's specifically running everything with pineapple pizzas.
The Italians are about to kill you right now.
By the way, Hawaiian pizza isn't Hawaiian either. It was invented in Canada, just so you know.
It's not a pizza, I guess. Answer you ask. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk about one of those nice missteps, Frank, that we did, and I think
BT also had like a negative thing. What did I do now again?
Yeah. I know it as YAMLgate, but I believe it's ADR10.
I kind of prepped this for festivities, but I'm going to open up here now.
Yeah.
So basically,
cheers.
From my understanding, is that this was the transition from a hobby project to basically a real product. It moved the UI to a modern architecture, stuff like that, but it did not go over well.
So, yeah, I think it went over really well, actually, looking at that, to be honest. But, sorry, what's the actual question with that?
Okay.
I'm still a bit flabbergasted on YAMLgate.
So I actually just wanted to know a little bit about the history behind it. I didn't ask this question. Sorry, I was just shit talking you first.
Basically, I'm shit posting. I'm familiar with from your end. You should visit Discord, by the way. She is really epically good at that, but in a fun way, in a good way. So no, YAMLgate. It's a terminology that came from the change at a time where I actually made a blog post about, it was titled "The Future of YAML," if I remember the title correctly. And it was interesting, right? At a time, Home Assistant was fully configured through YAML. There was no UI thing possible, right? You could view the UI, you could turn on off your UI lights in the UI and such. There was a small automation editor, I believe. It was basically not really good and usable. There were some things, but most of the stuff wasn't in the UI. And I think a year before YAMLgate, we started moving or adding the ability for the UI. Pause wrote a data flow thing where you go and get forms in the UI and add stuff into it and save data and what. And what happened is that integrations started moving to the UI. Integrations got a UI where you could set it up. You could add an integration through the UI like we know today. And that went actually really well. It was really well received, that part. However, there was a large part of the community that still did everything in YAML. And what happened is that a lot of our contributors were moving through the UI, but if they did, some people would get angry, or they tried to get some balls in the air where they try to make both the YAML and the UI work in, but it became like a little bit problematic. If somebody created something in the UI and did something changes in YAML, which one would win, what would be the right configuration? There were a lot of stress and things and bugs around here, but it made it really hard. So at some point we started the discussion about like, should we move all parts that are configuration basically into the UI? So everything that works with integrating a device or service, should that move to the UI? So this became a discussion among the team, but also among all the community members of the Home Assistant organization, which were around 100 people at the time, I would say. People that did reviewing, coding, people that were around here for years already. So we started discussing that idea and made the whole artificial decision proposal. We got it signed off by over 60 maintainers, by the way, regular maintainers of the project. So it was not a light decision. There were a lot of people involved. So at that point, we made a decision to, from that point on, only move integrations to the UI. If they connect to a device or service, the integration should be configurable through the UI and through the UI only. And that's the move we made. And at the time, it was like we were insane, basically, right? How could you do that? This is a large change. And how would I do everything in YAML? But we're now 5 years ahead, I would say, from that event, maybe-ish. Something like that. If you now see an integration that works in YAML, most people are annoyed. Things shifted, right? If you see a custom integration that has YAML only config, you often go into the issue tracker and find a request of somebody who why is this not configurable in the UI? And we still have integrations that are not configurable through the UI where people like, when is this moving? And we still see integrations move into the UI every single release. This is not something that is easy. But I would say most integrations, at least on my instance, basically everything is in the UI nowadays. And in hindsight, I think it's one of the best decisions we've ever made. Absolutely, ADR 007 and ADR 10. I can dream them by heart at this point. It was a hard period, but I think this is one of the things where the flywheel was hard to push, but eventually turned out to be great, and I'm happy with that.
Sometimes I was going to say, sometimes I get people that have been around the community forever who still make things in YAML, telling me how to do stuff in YAML, and I'm like, I can't do this, guys.
No,
right, but I think for me, YAMLgate also shows that us as the people leading Home Assistant, we're not afraid of, like, when we see the future, of making the tough decisions, right? We will not, there will be pushback on the decisions we make sometimes very loud, like in the case of YAMLgate. And we listen, we understand, we generally know these are coming sometimes, but we see a future, we see a place where more people can use Home Assistant. It's easier to update. And if you make, your smart home should not be like about who can best configure integrations, right? It's about, it's about dashboards. It's about automations. It's about voice control. It's about all these things we do on top. And so
making your home smart.
let's make these
Right.
mundane things.
Not maintaining your OS. These are things that you shouldn't be worrying about. You should be worrying about automating your home, making it smart,
exactly,
and not
so let
be
us just
worried
do
about all
that,
that stuff.
Yeah.
Is it smart home or is it automated home? This is something that I like to provoke people a lot, because my view of smart home is not something that is currently available anywhere on the market. And I know we talked about it.
We
talked
have
about
visions.
it.
I wrote in 2014 or 15. I wrote this like, what is a smart home? What is a automated home, right? And I said like a smart home would be one that looks at all the data and what is happening in your house and starts proactively, basically writing automations, doing things for you as it happens. Well, we are currently an automated home where a user creates automations to create or to simulate this, where they have these things happen for them. I still think today that's the best we can offer. I think with large language models, AI developments, there is a future, but I think we're still a couple of years out where we can start better predicting how you're acting and have like a large language model understand the nuance, what is actually being done. Are we always doing this? What should we act on? And I think we'll get there. But yeah, indeed, the actual true, like, we have a smart home that is hands off, we're not there yet.
Yeah, that's the way I describe what I do for people is that I work on a smart home automation solution so that they understand. It's a mouthful, but it's very clear what it is. It's not an equivalent to the Alexa or Google devices or Apple devices that everybody else has, because you can talk to those and have them create things for you. But a Home Assistant is an automation solution rather than, at least to me.
Or UI interface, right? It depends a little bit on who you are as a person.
Yeah.
But the main line of the story, from my perspective, is that Jarvis is still just a movie part, an actual thing, right? That's something but that's true, and that's where we are at. And with the whole generation of machine learning, and especially AI right now, things become more interesting. That's definitely true. But yeah, we're not. Depends on what you see as a smart home. I think right now, if we look at our community, I think we have two kinds of people. One would be the ones that create the dashboards and interact with it all through dashboards or voice, or automate the hell out of their homes, doing all kinds of nice things like without any worry. I think that are in generic probably getting killed by the product department, because that are not the personas kind of deal. Maybe I'm not sure how that works, but yeah, that's how I generally view it. Either you do a lot of dashboarding or you do a lot of automations. I saw somebody, by the way, being happy we didn't choose for XML, Paulus. I think that's
yeah.
Look,
I would agree.
We used a conf file back in the very early days before YAML, and then because it was built into Python, and then I looked into TOML for a bit, but there was not a proper Python package, and then we went for YAML. So I'm glad YAML definitely has flaws, and I think we use YAML 1.0 and not YAML 1.1, which is already 10 years old. But at this point, we can no longer migrate. It's so, the white space is hard for people, but I think opening and closing tags is worse.
So I hear a comment a lot, right? Like, why didn't we choose JSON, for example? And everybody who's watching and still asking that, please do use JSON, because YAML is fully JSON subset, right? So you can actually just use JSON directly into your YAML files. So if that's your goal.
Paulus, by the way, I have one question for you. I know I did video. I never released a video, I think, on that. But there is actually still one component, one internal integration. Home Assistant is using text file as a configuration file.
Yes, which is the light profiles.
Yes, exactly.
This is funny because this is like Home Assistant started with Philips Hue, right? And I was like, in the beginning, we had Philips Hue, we had Cast, we had Tomato router to get presence detection going, because that was the router I was running. And then we wanted to do more in like, I want to set a light to this preset, and I want to not put it in a service call. So we have light profiles.csv. It still works today. One of the most powerful features actually of light profiles is that you can set a default. If you don't specify any parameters for turning on a light, you can specify defaults for groups or lights, individual lights. And is it something that should come to the UI? Maybe. I feel like it's also very in a way advanced and complicated. We do have all the frameworks in place to put it in, but yeah, it is funny. It's still there because everybody uses the light integration. Almost no one uses light profiles.
I love it. I really the hidden gem. I like finding gems in Home Assistant. I do a lot of videos about gems, and that's one of the gems.
That's lovely. That I didn't even know about that. That's funny. The little things that like everybody knows about that's still kind of hidden in Home Assistant that just no one touches anymore, and it just comes up on the streams is very funny to me. I love it. Someone asked, what are live profiles?
There is a link on the integrations page, Home Assistant documentation.
Cool.
Yeah,
it's actually called
page.
live profiles. Yeah.
It's on the live integration page.
Yeah. CSV files are both the past and the future.
Every time we're talking about CSV, everybody's like, what has Paulus done now?
But at least we now have export to Excel. So
yeah, exactly.
Yes, we do. That was a couple months ago, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was a long time coming as well. So I want to switch it just a little bit back to the Discord, in which I'll talk a little bit more about that later as well, too, because there were changes that happened on Sunday, and it's a hot topic in the server right now.
Great changes.
Shut up, Frank. The collaboration that happened before on GitHub was a little bit more spotty. It was relied on people paying attention to their notifications, and we know how well a lot of people pay attention to those, especially for messages on GitHub. So Discord kind of made collaboration easier for you guys. But not only that, it made the beta channel a thing as well, because my understanding is there were no betas before. Am I correct? Frank, I'll let you do it.
Why no betas before? Like back in the day, yes, no, we didn't have betas.
No.
I think we started doing betas about 5 years ago, around the time we did the UI stuff, actually.
I mean, our release, we used to have a crazy release schedule. So first of all, in the beginning of me was just like, oh, this is a nice day, we're going to tag a release. But then we did, you know what, we're going to do every 2 weeks a release, because I was working somewhere, we were doing every 2 weeks a release, and I was like, oh, that's nice, you get this rhythm. And we started doing this for Home Assistant, and it actually worked really well, because everybody knew exactly, predictable, we're going to ship the release, contributors would get their changes in, but also all of a sudden you're doing 26 releases a year. We were moving and iterating so fast. Everybody was like, if you were into smart home, you're going to be on the Home Assistant train, because 26 times a year, you're going to get new stuff. And people were contributing left and right, and people loved it. Who didn't love us was us, because we were spending 1 week after the release trying to get like fixes in and whatever, working with the community. And then the next week, people want to get their stuff into the next release. And so it was this grind that just kept happening. And so we started slowing down a little bit, adding a beta period. And eventually
we went for the 3 weeks, right? With 1 week beta period and 2 weeks development. That's how we then ended up at that point. So it was a 3 week cycle.
Yeah, and I think with when we added the month versioning or the date versioning, that's when we did, now we do just monthly.
Makes it a lot easier.
First Wednesday of the month. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. That's since I stepped into it, beta was just a thing, and it's just a big like I said, there's just a big energy around it when it comes to beta week, when we open up the channel and Frank presses buttons and says things are live. Like, people are constantly in that chat just talking, making everything easier for people as you go through.
I think what makes the beta channel very magical, and it's something that other, Google Home doesn't have it, Apple Home doesn't have it, is that in the beta channel, users, developers, product, UX, everybody is in there. Everybody that is changing something in this release, or everybody that is testing this out, we're all talking, discussing. You have real-time interactions, and you're actively talking to the people building the product you're using. Like, that's because the Home Assistant team is also community, right? It's not some siloed group in Silicon Valley in an office that is not allowed to talk to users. No, we are users ourselves. We are part of this community, and we love talking to the people. And let's find the issues, let's fix bugs. During the beta, we make changes that are sometimes pretty radical, where sometimes we revert a feature, we change its behavior, we change the defaults, purely because we're talking and we're like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
BT likes the reverted features when he already made a video and we decided to do something from there, right?
We now have to have longer disclaimers on our videos than you have on your releases.
No, but in the end, if something gets pulled from beta, there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah,
there is something that is it's not ready. It's not something that we like to do. I don't like to do it. It changes your plans, right? So
I think that the last major one was that login screen, credentials, pushing
strict connections.
Yeah. That was the last one, as I remember.
Yep. Which still is on the agenda, by the way. So
that's still.
In case you're wondering, that's not forgotten about.
No, just we can't. It's still being worked on. That's what happens sometimes. So, and we tell people whenever they ask on our release streams, we're strict connections, and we're like, we're still trying to sort it out. Thanks.
There is a trademark for that soon.
Soon.
Yeah,
yep, just all the soon emojis. That's all you need. Absolutely. So you guys went from working on GitHub and having a very small group of contributors to having a Discord server to having a Facebook group blow up out of nowhere to everything just kind of exploded over the last few years. And that's kind of where I come in. So what really, as you say, Paulus, you guys are 100% community members. You guys are in there, you're talking with everybody. You guys do this stuff at home too, off hours. It's not like you're just doing this during working hours, right? So what really led you guys, and I'll start with Paulus first. I think both you guys, you and Frank, have an opinion or perspective on this, but what led to needing a community manager to be hired?
I think it's just that everything we do kind of grows. And so in the beginning, you have 10 hats, but then each hat becomes the work of 2 people, and all of a sudden it just doesn't. And the moment you have too many responsibilities, there are things like community management, or hey, let me the first thing you do when you're focused on work is okay, I'm not gonna hang out in the chat, because that's some people think it's a distraction, and well, now you're not hanging out with your community members. And I've noticed it myself. I went from the general channels to just hang out in developer channels, hang out in the integration owner channels, hang out in group chats with certain smaller groups of people. And it's every time it's just because I cannot keep up with these kind of things always anymore. And I think when we don't see what is happening, and of course we have a great moderator team and they keep a lot of things in track, but it also means that who escalates things, who has the one with decision power? How do we actively look at the needs? It's it's what we do for product and UX, right? We are looking at the user needs before we write in code. It's also with community management. You want to be proactive and not reactive, right? If community is such a valuable something, and it takes all this time to grow, and to change course, I think Frank mentioned in the beginning, it's very difficult to change the course of a community. So if you see your community going south, if you attract a bunch of racist people, and all of a sudden that becomes an acceptable thing, it's to turn it around is super difficult, because you have this reputation that nobody wants to come. And we have something really, really unique going. I feel we have such a helpful community, such a great product that we're all rallying around, helping each other get the most out of it. And in the end, Home Assistant is also only a tool, right? Our goal is for you to be able to live your life, and Home Assistant can do that, make that better. Then use Home Assistant, and that's where I think that having a community manager makes sure that everybody not only is happy but stays happy, and that we are setting up a course where we can make sure that we're only getting better in serving everyone. That's why we need a community manager.
I cannot add much to this, but in the end, right? Like that, I'm totally agreeing. I think we need a lot of structure in many places. It's not just community. In this case, you're here. So yes, we do. Sorry, there. Camera. The community is an important aspect and it deserves the attention it needs. And if we look at where we came from, we used to be able to do all of this, like releases, release notes, development, community, and you name it. We were able to do that with a small team besides our day-to-day job. Yeah. And this kept growing, and it was just impossible to do it all and give everything the attention it needed. And even moving towards like this being a full-time job, which I thank everybody for, by the way, which I still subscribe to Nabagasa and whatnot. It's really cool, and I'm honored that I can do this. But even with the growth we're going through, we outgrow that. And that's where people like you, Missy, for the community come in, right? And I truly appreciate what you're doing there. It's amazing. Please keep shit posting as much as you do. I enjoy it. But at the same time, you give a lot of structure and flair and to the community. And that structuring part, right? That's the easy part that falls through. The making rules and boundaries and structure and how things look and how things are organized are generally lower priority, and you wait until it happens naturally. And as it grows, it also becomes more difficult. So the chances that it more naturally will happen becomes less. So that's where people like you come in, and that's also why we have UX, for example, nowadays, or people that work with us for communications and such things. We're just offloading and spreading, and well, divide and conquer would be maybe there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words, and I will never stop shitposting. That is absolutely my goal in life, is to make sure people are having fun and excited. And it honestly, thank you for leading into that categorization thing for me, Frank, because
and I forgot one thing, by the way. California role just mentioned, but you have to smash the like button on this stream.
Oh yeah, there's a like button down there, guys. If you have not hit it, you should.
It's our birthday. Like, at least you can do this some up, right?
Yeah, that's all. It's our birthday. You are doing a disservice for us on our birthday if you don't hit that like button.
Right. That's categorization. Yes, go.
Categorization, yes. It's been a hot topic on Discord because on Sunday I completely reorganized our Discord server. The two big things that was the goal for it was making things easier for new community members to actually find where to get help, and expand our I'm going to call it off-topic channels, but in this release, I realized it wasn't really the right way to phrase it, but more community-focused, rather not so Home Assistant and like trying to troubleshoot things, pulled it more out of what we were actually doing in those support channels, which was kind of creating little sub-communities within the larger community. So I went through and made some Discord changes. Here's my announcement. As you will see, I included the emoji reactions in there, so you can see someone was not happy with these changes. There's a couple other messages.
Just kidding.
But that's something I expected, right? We've said it a couple times. People don't like change. People don't like when things are different from what they've done. So there's been a lot of shifts that happened in the Discord server on Sunday. Support channels are forums instead of text chats. That's actually been the biggest hot topic. A lot of those sub-communities are now missing their spaces to talk about the very specific stuff. Hardware-related things, protocol-related things, not related to support. So I'm actually working on that. The lobby category was expanded and renamed to community. So that's a big thing. There's a whole bunch of different topic channels you can go in and do. There's the kitchen, talk about food that you're doing, appliances you're hooking up to Home Assistant, meme channel now where you can go and shit post without getting yelled at from other people because you're in an off-topic channel. You can go through and actually now share your projects in a shameless self-promotion. channel now. So we really want to kind of encourage people to do more of that kind of stuff. There is a new community stage. Discord has a feature called Stage. As I've messed with it, it's very similar to Teams. You have this big presentation, one person sitting up at it. You can pull people up to actually talk, but you have this big audience. You can have hundreds of members in this. It's a pretty decent presentation thing. And we're actually going to invite you guys to join us over there for a Q&A at the end. But there's more work to be done. Obviously, these changes ended up being massive. There are some things I ended up missing. I misstepped in a couple of the ways I communicated things in the community, and I actually hashed a lot of it out in our water cooler channel, which is where everybody's been talking to me about things. I need a bot to actually come and help people with notifications for these forum threads. People very much want to know tag notifications. And there's a couple other improvements that I'm going to make regarding permissions overall, because one of the things people were missing was the ability to embed links, which remove the ability to actually add GIFs in chat. So there's a whole bunch of different things that can still be done there. So I actually want to transition into now, what's next? I love these transitions. I am so very pleased with everything that our graphic designer made for me. It was very pleasing. So basically, what's next, guys? The Discord adjustments are coming. I'm resolving a few pain points from this transition. There's a new kind of off-topic community channel that's going to be focused on hardware. So the people who do want to talk about hardware-specific things can share their projects there rather than feeling like they're a little bit left out. Forum changes are coming. That was my next project, and I had not been quiet about that to my forum regulars. I actually am currently collecting feedback about what changes people would like to see over there. The admin side of discourse is what I'm going to have to fight with the most there. So that's something that it'll be there with time, but I'm still working on it. One thing I want to announce is actually Paulus, Frank, and I will be at GitHub Universe at the end of October. So if you are there, if you are going to be there, if you're going to be in the area, maybe we'll have a meetup. Who knows? We'll announce more as we actually get closer. But if you're going to be at GitHub Universe, so will we. We'd love to see you. And then
actually, Missy, one thing. I mean, if people want to host us on a Home Assistant meetup in San Francisco the weekend before Universe, let us know and we'll attend. Like, we'll need a space, at least 50 people, I would say. I mean, there's a couple of users there. But it will be cool. If somebody wants to organize it and drive it, we'll be there.
Yeah. Just if you hit me up, I can coordinate everything when it comes to making sure that the three of us are already prepared, see what we can actually do to help out with the coordination and setting it up too. So we really want to see you guys. And that's one of the things that I'm excited about when it comes to Home Assistant Day. This is something that I'm really excited about. It's going to be essentially a single day where all of us around the world just set up our own meetups. We have one day where it's essentially a 24-hour party, starting, if we want, with Jesse in New Zealand. He can kick everything off there from the beginning, ending with me here in the Pacific time zone, the farthest outside. So we can get almost a full 24-hour party going for Home Assistant Day. I don't have any information about it outside of this, and that it will be early next year. So don't expect anything new to be said about it until probably closer end of the year, maybe even in January. But it is something I'm planning. Us at Nabucasa, we've been very busy and we're making a lot of things, and I don't want to have this pressure put on us on top of that. So, but it's something that us as employees in our own cities will be hosting our own stuff. So you get to come and meet us and hang out with us and just talk about Home Assistant stuff. So there'll be more information about that, in a few months, hopefully. So that's actually the biggest kind of conversation I wanted to have about community. We spent a nice hour and a half. I'm very impressed with that. But first, before I actually let everybody go, I have one more question. I would like to see from Paulus and Frank, Frank first, because I made Paulus go first last time.
Okay.
What would you like to see evolve in the community? You and I have had massive talks about this. I've already done some of the changes you and I have talked about. What else would you like to see evolve?
Oh, that's a good question. What I would like to see, I don't know. I just want to see it grow and see, like, get the inspiration from it, not just from me, but towards each other, that there's always there. I think in terms of community, I think we can always get better in sharing, right? Share the love has been a big theme in the history of us, of Home Assistant. And I still can remember the day at ING where Paulus is saying that sentence on stage with that big share the love thing. I think that always remains. The community is there because of the community. Keep sharing what you have, keep sharing your knowledge, keep inspiring each other. And if there's anything we can do in the future from our end, I would say that we will be able to better facilitate that sharing. And I feel that that's where we can go and do better, maybe, but that's hard to quantify right here on the spot, I would say. But otherwise, yes, that's it. I think we should be able to do what we do and keep that flywheel going. And if somebody wants to, like, spin that wheel harder or maybe even push and change the direction, please do so, because that's what brought us here.
Yeah.
Back to the flywheel.
Yeah. No, for me, I think, what I would love, I think from the community, I would love more people in person meeting up and actually help each other. And I think that, because this is what I did in my summer. I've been, like, almost every week I was, like, somewhere else meeting people from the community, and it's so great to hear what people are talking about. And everybody, like, one person has an issue, somebody else has already solved it. There's, especially regionally, I feel like we could do a lot more as Home Assistant. Like, every country, especially Europe, there's a lot of smaller countries, and they all have their own electricity companies with their own energy meters, with their own protocol systems. And I feel our power is that we can actually say, okay, Luxembourg, like, you don't have many people, but here is the exact setup you need to get all your electricity in, your trash schedule, your national holidays. Like, we should be able to make that happen for every place on earth, really. And I think that's where I would love to get our community to be more regionally organized. And I hope Home Assistant Day can help, even, like, jumpstart that in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also work from us to do to facilitate that better. Like, Joost fixes geo-discovery, Joost.
Yeah, location-based discovery is about time. I think what I agree, and I think that for me personally, it's still a little bit of Corona that destroyed that a bit, actually, because at that time we kind of get used to do everything online at some point, right? It's a good time to break out, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Joost says there's a branch. So, no, Andre actually mentioned that to me, that he has a local group that actually meets up regularly. So I know there are groups out there that do that, and they tend to actually be localized in Europe. So I'd like to encourage it more outside of that. Like, if we could have more of those meetups across the US, it'd make it easier for a few of us who are in the US to show up. Or, as we get further around the world, there's Asia, there's Australia, there's New Zealand. Like, I know we have fans all over the place for this, and making sure they're, like, meeting up and actually solving these problems with each other is really, in person, there's a different feel for it. I totally understand, because in Discord, it's that live active chat that you have, but sitting in person and drinking a beer with someone is absolutely completely different experience in all reality.
Yeah, it is. I must apologize to the community members here. I really would love to have quarterly meetups, but sometimes life just gets you pulled one way or the other. I'm currently happy that this year we will be having 3 meetups. So the next one will be probably in around 1 month. It will be third meetup for this year, and I'm really, really happy because it's an awesome community. And on the other hand, it's also great to see people talk with you, Mrs. I have colleagues from my company. I have colleagues that have worked for my company. I have my vendors, I have my clients. So everybody is actually there. You meet, and competitors, actually competitors that I work in the industry are also meeting up, and we are talking about something else besides work, having a blast, beer, and like, don't buy company A, buy company B, or something like that. Or Frank once again did something, and so that's
it was a lot of fun last summer.
It was really
Why me? Sorry, no, it's fine. No, I always say, like, I'm often the bringer of the news, right? So like, but yeah, somebody is asking, by the way, if we are in the same room, Paulus.
I got on WhatsApp from our community. I got the same message on the WhatsApp.
No, I explain what's happening. We have this. Frank is in the virtual room. This is I spent a lot of time building out my office with like actual 3D panels and like decoration of Home Assistant. And then there's this running joke in Nabu Casa that people are all putting a virtual background to have the exact same look as me. So.
Yep, we did it in our all hands yesterday. There was like half of us with Paulus's background in this entire meeting, and it was very funny. No, it's.
I just kept it here.
Yeah, no, we thought it'd be very funny, and it is. Well, actually, that brings us to the end. We've talked about everything I wanted to talk about. We actually have time now for a Q&A, but we're not having our Q&A here on YouTube. We actually have the community stage set up in our Discord, and when we actually close out, the invite link for joining the server will actually be there and available for people until we go offline. So you'll actually see where you can come and talk to us. It won't just be me, Frank, and Paulus. I'm going to try to drag in more of the employees. So you'll be able to see several of us, hopefully, over there and ask us questions. We have a pretty high limit on the amount of people that can join. So let's see if we can break Discord.
Yeah, and it's a place for AMA, right? Ask us really anything. Like, go ahead.
No, definitely. Before we actually wrap up, though, Missy, can I show this banner?
Oh, yes. Yes.
As you might know, Home Assistant is nowadays part of the Open Home Foundation. We launched it in last April. Nabu Casa is the commercial partner of the Open Home Foundation. That means that if you support Nabu Casa is the way the Open Home Foundation gets their developers paid. So please subscribe to Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. You'll get an end-to-end encrypted remote connection. You'll be able to use our voice assistant or Google or Amazon's if you prefer. But also, mainly important, you support the development of Home Assistant. So there's a lot of people working full-time on Home Assistant, on ESP Home, on Z-Wave.js, ZigPy. There's so many different projects that we make possible. And that's only possible because all of you. There is no investors. There's no debt. We only are funded by our community, and we only serve the community. That is awesome. We have something really good going. And if you're still watching, then you probably love it a lot. So show it. Please subscribe to Home Assistant Cloud, and we'll keep building cool stuff.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Yeah, thanks for that reminder.
Speaker.
Yeah, and make us bigger. Yeah, like we've grown significantly even since I've been hired. So we're going good places with that, and we have a lot of people who ask how else they can contribute, and really the best way to contribute to us is getting that subscription. Even if you don't use it, that's helping us. So it's absolutely fine to do that. So, well, thank you for that reminder, Paulus. And with that, I'll actually thank everybody for joining us for our 11th anniversary stream, and see you guys all over in Discord here shortly.
Do you know where to find us on Discord? The
link will be here up on the screen I'm about to put up.
Okay, good.
For
BT, thank you for being here, by the way, BT. It's good
to see you. Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Really cool.
Yes, it was lovely.
Good. Yeah. No, thank you so much as well, Missy, for organizing all of this, the new changes to the Discord, and for making our community awesome.
Thank you for bringing me on this awesome ride.